In comparison of change from North Carolina to the 21st century by Erin. In history, North Carolina has been a leader. It was the birthplace of Virginia Dare. In 1775, North Carolina was the first colony to authorize a vote for independence from England. 20 years later, the first University of State opened. The richly varied economy in North Carolina is based on the state's fertilized farms. It's a mixture of traditional manufacturing, high-technology industries, and tourism. The state has a wide variety of soils. The land supports small tract farms as well as broad grazing area for beef and dairy cattle. In 1663, King Charles II issued a charter granting land or creation of an organization such as a company or university to 8 nobles to settle south of Virginia. They created Carolina and included the previous settlement. However, because of internal problems, the Crown took over the colony and formed North and South Carolina in 1729. When the Carolinas split, South Carolina got the better harbor and North Carolina was stuck with the bad harbor and had to transport and deliver their foods or objects to Virginia for Virginia to ship. In colonial days, mostly everyone had to make their own clothes. The materials used were wool, linen, and thread. They would grow flax, and for wool they raised sheep. Many colonists only had 2 sets of clothing, one for every day and one for Sunday. The 2 sets of clothing would get very smelly because the colonists only bathed twice a year. Children would gather berries and roots to make dye to color the thread. Girls learned to knit and make stockings and caps. Shoemakers made shoes that fit each one. There was no left or right shoe. The men wore knee-length pants called breeches. They also wore a waistcoat and a coat. Young boys wore loose-fitted dresses until 5 and then dressed like their fathers. Young girls dressed like their mothers. Wealthy ladies wore stays. Stays were tightly laced on garments, stiffened with whalebone, and it was hard to breathe. Poor women couldn't wear stays because they were always working. Babies wore puddings, what we call pillows. They would wear puddings for cushion when they fell. The most visited room in a colonial home was the kitchen. Their tools were made out of iron. Iron tools lasted longer and standed the heat. Women began their cooking before dawn because meals took hours to prepare. Breakfast was served right after every family member did their morning chores. Lunch was served at 2. Men also helped plenish the food by trapping, hunting, and fishing animals. Women would boil the meat in stews. Soon the families figured out they could use spices. For spices they used herbs, roots, and berries. They also found a way to make syrup from maple trees. Tea was also made from roots and leaves. Dandelions were found to make a coffee drink. They would drink milk, but not water. Colonial people thought the water would make them sick. Cider was made from peaches or apples. Beer existed in the colonial times, and the people would even drink it before breakfast. Before winter came, the colonists worked diligently to stock and dry foods. Sweets and desserts colonists enjoyed. Pies, cobblers, and cakes usually were served after meals. If there wasn't enough time to make pie or other desserts, apple tansy was served. This dessert was made from apples covered with a sauce made of beaten eggs, cream, nutmeg, and sugar. Colonists favored this dessert. Children also had to work to do just like their parents. Children start chores at an early age. Laziness was considered a sin. Girls would help with the inside chores and cooking. Inside chores consist of sweeping the floors, making beds, feeding the chickens, milking the cows, and gathering the food from the garden. Boys in the colonial time would work just as hard as their fathers. Boys would walk barefoot picking weeds around the plants in the fields. Another job was to care for animals and run errands constantly. Boys learned to hunt, fish, learn to make furniture, repair broken barrels and buckets. Colonial life was hard, but everyone knew they have to help make their home successful. My mother grew up in the small town of Tipton, Iowa. It was the county seat of Cedar County. Tipton is located 30 minutes away from the University of Iowa. My mom also lived a block and a half away from the middle school and high school. Another cool fact is that Buddy Holly's bus stopped in Tipton on the way to Clear Lake for the winter dance party. The changes around my mom was when she was a senior, the space shuttle exploded and a teacher was on board. They also had no computers, but in place of computers, there were typewriters. One last change was when my mom was a freshman, she went to state track all 4 years of high school. My relative was trapped in the 80s and her clothing consisted of Bright neon colors, leg warmers, bell bottoms, flash dance style, big hair, big earrings, and clown makeup. My relative as a kid was hooked on cereal and spaghetti. Happy Joe's Canadian pizza and Jell-O was the other popular food. My relative's chores consisted of cleaning up after self, putting everything away, keeping room clean, dishes, vacuuming, mowing, and dusting. It all depended on the age. My name is Erin and I live in Clear Lake, Iowa. Clear Lake is a medium-sized town and is known for its not clear lake and its bizarre weather conditions. It's also known for the famous singer Buddy Holly and his crew at the famous site of the Surf Ballroom. They would perform a winter dance every year and Buddy Holly would lead it, but as they loaded the plane went haywire and crashed in the middle of a field about 2 miles from my house. For myself, I haven't had a drastic change, but I would say I have had a few scary times in my life. One is that my dad's work shut down and he lost his job. He was jobless for a while, but finally got a job. It wasn't good pay and it wasn't great hours, but it was a job. He soon made lots of friends, but found a new, better, high-paying, great hours job. One of them today is now his best friend, and they are over all the time. If my dad didn't lose his job, my dad wouldn't have him as a best friend and his son as my brother's best friend. My style of clothing usually contains something comfy. Sweatpants and t-shirts you will probably see me in. Also, yoga pants, slippers, shorts, flip-flops, no shoes, or athletic shoes are mainly what I wear too. I'm a very busy person to have a nice prepared meal, so my favorite quick food is cereal. I'm not a picky eater, I eat everything, but mac and cheese and Chinese is my favorite food. The most common chores I do is pick up after myself and other things around the house. Dishes, helping out my parents, taking care of the pets, cook, vacuum, dust, organize, and any other uncommon chores. I hope you have taken some interesting facts from this comparison of the colonial time to the 21st century. Thanks.